Got to the Prado, opened the doors, and there was a nan and a pop, or two elderly people, probably in their 70s, in the front seat, and two really young children in the back seat. Luckily, when we opened those doors, and this is sort of some learning that came out from this later on, as we open the doors, when the doors are shut, it becomes the car's buoyant because it's a sealed environment. When we open the doors, it allows water to flow in, which then pushed it to the ground and gave it some stability. So we sort of alleviated one hazard without even realising we were going to do it, but it was great. The poor kids in the back were terrified. So I looked at my partner, who's probably about 50 to 60 kilos wringing wet, but has a heart bigger than Farley. Like, this girl is just unbelievably tough. You want to talk about a tractor? She invented Massey Ferguson, I reckon. So I said to her, like, we didn't have any life jackets for them. So I'm like, very quickly in my head, well, the time it felt like it was taking forever, trying to make a decision in my head of whether we leave them in the car and God knows what'll happen, or we take the risk, grab these kids and get them to some dry ground.
Welcome to Behind the Badge. This podcast aims to improve the health and well-being of frontline workers. Each episode features candid conversations with former and current frontline community members and subject matter experts. Join us as we explore the unique nature of serving in high-risk roles, sharing inspiring stories of resilience, strategies, and resources. We are not qualified health professionals, nor are we aligned with any organization. The opinions expressed in the podcast are solely our own. Additionally, the content may evoke strong emotional responses for some. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the show, Luke Smith.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Mate, what we normally do with most of our guests is just get a little bit of context and get to know a little bit about you. And we usually start back with a year or younger self.
Yeah, sure. I was born 1984. I was born in Sydney in New South Wales. It doesn't mean that I support those stinking Blues. I'm a Queenslander through and through. I started my schooling life down in Canberra, and we had a fairly big cattle property in our family. So I did schooling in Canberra and was back up on the property in the holidays, up in Burke in sort of northwest New South Wales, and drought got us in the late 90s, I think, or late 90s, mid 90s, and moved to Brisbane where I did my high school and graduated around 2001. Didn't go all the way through to grade 12. Joined the army as soon as I could at 17, and spent the next 10 years in the military up until 2011, which is where I found myself in the fire service and spent up until this year in that role. Growing up, I was never a scholar. I think a lot of us that sort of fall into these roles, none of us were really scholars in our time as children. I think, if you go back and look at the majority of our report cards, it would be, the case of if this child applied themselves, he'd be a really good student, but, he's a class clown and acts out and is loud and makes jokes, and that's probably where I fall. It's where I do fall into there. And like I say, it's where a lot of us fall into, and naturally, we gravitate to the careers that we have, whether it be in military or emergency response.
Yep, that's like you read my report card right there, Luke.
Yeah. It's ironic how many of us fall into that category, and like you listen to other people who have been on these podcasts and the stories they have, and it's almost a script that we all have.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
Anyone else in the family with defence background? What was the desire to join defence?
So my grandfather was in the Air Force and served up in the Malayan conflict, and my uncle was a submariner with the Navy, and my great grandfather served with was an army reservist actually, and served in Kokoda. So there's always a bit of family history back to there. When we moved to Brisbane, found an interest, or found out, you could do the old Army cadets and join that, and that really sparked my interest in the military and really sort of accelerated my desire to want to serve in the military. And my mum and my stepdad, I was brought up mostly a lot with my grandparents. My mum and my dad and my stepdad all had, pretty sort of significant mental health and substance abuse problems. But luckily had some pretty solid, grounded people around me to point me in the right direction. And through mum's flaws, she stuck by me and stuff. Through her flaws, she did the best she could. But her grandparents drove me a lot to to succeed in life. And yeah,
Mate, how did you go as a 17-year-old at Kapuka?
Struggled, yeah. It was so, even though you've been doing Army cadets and been exposed to a little bit of that life, it's a whole other world in there. So this is going back to 2002. It wasn't quite the environment that it used to be, probably back in the early 90s, mid 90s, with the old box room counselling or dead ground counselling. But it was still a big culture shock to a 17-year-old who's come out of straight out of home, straight out of school life, straight into a very structured, regimented life at Kapuka. And it did take me probably a good few weeks to adjust to that. And I did miss home and question whether I'd made the right decision. And luckily had a really good section commander down there who was from one area, who pointed me again in the right direction, gave me a good chat, and was able to punch on and complete that and have a fantastic 10 years in the military.
What was your role, mate, once you got through Kapuka? What was your core?
So I joined as an infantryman and did back then I did 6 weeks in Kapuka, and then went up to Singleton, which I've thoroughly enjoyed way more than what I did at Kapuka. Like it was like there was a purpose to what you're learning and subject matter experts in that field that rather than just a generic sort of a cook trying to teach you how to do foreign movement, you had an infantry soldier with experience from Timor or even Somalia, putting everything into context for you. So it gave me the why behind, or the how behind the why, if that makes sense. Did my IETs then at Singleton for the infantry, and then posted up to Townsville into the 2nd Battalion. Got injured pretty early in the piece and had to rehab through there, which was a pretty shitty experience. The rehab process back then was almost null. Was almost nil, sorry. And you had to fight to, prove yourself. You already had to fight to prove yourself as a young teenager in an infantry battalion surrounded by, a bunch of men, of alpha males, let alone trying to do that injured. So that was pretty hard to navigate as a young teenager. And so did that. And then ended up core transferring after 4 years over the cavalry. So 4 years at 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment back in Brisbane. Most of that time spent either outfield preparing to go on operations in the Middle East, or in the Middle East on operations, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then at the end of, I think it was 2008, posted back to Townsville into B Squadron, 3rd 4th Cavalry Regiment, and finished my last 2 years off up here, and then joined the fire service in 2011 and went down to Bowen. Started my first fire station was down in Bowen in the Whitsunday region.
Yeah, nice. Just quickly, mate, I just want to jump back. You mentioned the Middle East there, and noting that you joined in 2002, 9/11 had happened the year previous. Was that an event that sort of drew you, further into the military, or were you a little bit, wary about that, or where you might get sent because the world was a little bit chaotic at that time?
No, I think I was totally naive to it. When 9/11 occurred, my application process was already in for the Army, because I think back then you could start the paperwork at like 16 and 9 months, and I wanted to be in there as soon as I could. So I think my application was already in, but I was pretty. I think, on reflection, I was pretty naive to what that would entail for the world over the next 20 years, 30 years, and how that would ultimately shape my life going forward as well. I remember hearing on the news at the time that the amount of people that have been killed, 200, 300, 400 people, whatever it was, struggling to comprehend that, and almost laying that in my head, laying out how that looks on a parade ground, and being like, man, that's unfathomable that there's that many people dead from a singular event, but very naive to what terrorism was, or how that would shape my life.
Yeah, nice. And so from that, like you said, you got in and it did shape your life because you had multiple deployments due to that event. When were those deployments and where to?
So in 2007, deployed to Afghanistan as part of the Reconstruction Task Force. The second one to go through then. So with the second regular force to go through Afghanistan outside of the Special Forces commitment that had already been there for a while. I'd re-injured my knee about 3 months into that trip, I think it was. So I was CASEVAC back to Australia, rehabbed. Quite the rehab process then was a lot better. Rehabbed and then got put straight back onto an Iraq trip with Overwatch Battle Group West number 4, which was also the last rotation of Australian regular forces through Iraq at that time. And did, I think it was 8 months over there in the south of Iraq.
So what age were you when you first landed in Afghanistan, Luke?
20, 21.
How was that for, 20, 20, 21 even, very young. What was that, that feeling of just landing in Afghanistan going, oh my God, this is real?
It was excitement, 100% excitement. Bit of the realism didn't come in. The gravity of the situation probably didn't roll in until the first time we rolled outside the gate. TF1 hadn't had a lot of, had almost no contacts or no incidents. They were very sort of risk averse. So there's nothing much that had come back outside of, any contacts or anything like that. So to us, it sort of seemed like it was going to be a bit of a benign deployment. We'd heard about what the Special Forces were up to, but we were under no illusion that we weren't Special Forces, we were cavalry, and we were there to protect engineers, to rebuild hospitals, bridges, whatever it was going to be. Maybe, again, a little bit naive, being so young, but rolling out of that gate for the first time, it definitely sunk in that we're now in Afghanistan. There's IEDs around, there's people that don't like us, that don't want us here, and the possibility of, an IED strike or a contact was pretty high. And subsequently, it was at the time, we then rolled into, we were there in the fighting season during the summer, and we rolled into some of the longest duration contacts that had happened with regular forces since Vietnam. And the first couple were pretty interesting. And after that, you sort of, it became the norm.
Get into it and crack on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
mate. Were you at that point on that trip in particular? Were you driving labs, or had the Bushmasters come in?
Nah, so there was Bushmasters there. Bushmasters were definitely in service, but I was in the lab. I was in the ASLAVs. So for those listening, on ASLAV is like for lack of a better term, it's like a tank, but instead of tracks, it's got wheels, and it's got a chain gun rather than a smoothbore cannon. That's more of a reconnaissance sort of a vehicle. It's got great mobility and great firepower. Pretty awesome vehicle. It was great to be driving one of them as a young 20-year-old. So the ASLAVs were crewed by guys from 2nd 14th, and we had B Squad and 3-4 Cav over there driving and crewing the Bushmasters for the infantry. It was a great time, great bunch of guys. Afghanistan, I don't look back on with much regret or bad memories at all.
When you say the Bushmasters, what's the difference between those two vehicles? Like, obviously...
Yeah, so an ASLAV is a fighting vehicle. It's high mobility, high speed, large firepower. Whereas a Bushmaster is almost like a personnel carrying vehicle. You can fit, 8, 9 blokes, 10 blokes in the back of them, including a driver, as well as a crew commander and a driver. The Bushmaster's only got a much smaller machine gun. But the big advantage of a Bushmaster over an ASLAV is the Bushmaster's got a V-shaped hull, so they're actually designed and built by an Australian guy and company. So they're designed to hit a mine. So when you hit an IED, the blast is deflected outwards, whereas an ASLAV is a flat bottom, has a flat hull. You can actually swim them in the water as well. They've got propeller drives on the back of them. But the disadvantage of having a flat bottom hull, having a flat surface at the bottom, is that when you roll over an IED, it's pretty catastrophic, and we'll probably get to that in a minute. Actually, when I say there's no negative memories, there's one that, pretty bad. Yeah, I'd come home by that stage on my being repatriated back to Australia, being injured, and he'd rolled in not long after, and he struck. He was driving the vehicle that I had, and unfortunately, hit an IED, and that got him. It was pretty shit,
mate. Few things for you there, like how obviously losing your mate, massive. Massive loss, but especially for you, you've just been sent home, and on top of that, it was your vehicle, mate. That I imagine there would have been some big emotions around a few of those things.
Yeah, it's come and got me later in life a lot more. I was still sort of pretty wrapped up in. I was pretty wrapped up in what was going on at the time, in rehabbing and getting back overseas and cracking on with my job. I'd had a lot of guilt around leaving my team, like leaving the team that I was part of over there. I was probably more concerned about that now then, whereas now when I reflect on it, a lot more guilt around, was that going to be me? Should it have been me? He was a much older guy, had kids, had a family. I'd had nothing at the time, and now with my own family and kids and stuff, like I reflect on that a lot more, and gets me a bit.
Man, when did you find that out? Because were you back rehabbing? Were you sort of disconnected from the unit and stuff you were part of, or were you like fully aware of sort of what was happening?
No, I think I was rehabbing. I was either rehabbing or on the lead up for the Iraq trip. Yeah. And I'd actually asked if I could, because I'd rehab fairly quickly. And I'd actually asked if I could go over and take his spot, because I knew there was going to be a person down, and I kind of felt that sort of need to do that. And for whatever reason it was, I was already forced assigned to Iraq, so that wasn't an option. Yeah, it's pretty hazy. Not that I don't talk about it, I just haven't reflected on it a lot. It's only sort of come up in the last few months, actually, like since I've come off fireys and started focusing on a few mental health things and going back down these paths. Yeah, I'm sure it'll come up a bit more in the future.
And is that something that, obviously the support you're getting outside, Loki, is that helping for those situations?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And I think we spoke the other day, Jando, about what I'm doing now with EMDR, and we can definitely go and touch on that and how that helps and what it is and stuff. Yeah, when someone first told me about what EMDR is, I was like, I sounded a bit, wishy-washy and whatnot. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it later.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
So, mate, said get me back there. Like I said, that's off the table. Time to focus on Iraq. Do you think that was helpful at that time to, I guess, have something else to focus on and move towards?
Yeah, definitely. It was good to be back in the seat and back operational, and running that ball up on the field again, so to speak. And Iraq was a lot quieter than what Afghanistan was in terms of operational capability, capacity, and contacts, and but it was still cool. There was still that feeling rolling at the gate, being tooled up, bombed up, plated up, ready for whatever was going to come. And there was a couple of sort of instances over there that were still good, and put all the training into practice, and positive outcomes for us. And it was a sort of feeling of completeness and fulfillment in that.
A little bit of a difference between the two, like you said, not only the tempo and intensity, but I imagine the landscape and the type of operations you're doing.
You ever seen that movie Mad Max Furiosa, the most recent one they did? That's sort of what I equate Iraq to. So, it's a bunch of young guys rolling around in heavily modified vehicles with high firepower, protecting someone else's oil and fuel. That's in a big desert landscape with very little features or trees or vegetation. Like, I was watching that coming home on the plane a little while ago, and I was like, man, that's what Iraq was like. It was just a bunch of young guys rolling around in tooled up vehicles, bombed up, ready for, someone to take us on, protecting someone's oil. Like, yeah.
What year was that? Did you say? Sorry.
That would have been, I think it must have been 07, 08 as well, because we're there over the Christmas, New Year period. So that'd be about right. Could rotate into Afghan in the early 07. I came home I'd been there for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, come home, rehab, and jump straight back on to an Iraq trip. Had them both in real quick succession. Had to get like a waiver to be able to deploy again so quickly. Being in cavalry, like there's only 2 cavalry units then, one in Brisbane and one in Darwin that were operational. So the requirement for cavalry assets overseas was huge. You had Iraq. So in Iraq, you had OBG and SecDet still going, which required ASLAVs. And then Afghanistan was well in swing with the Reconstruction Task Force. So we were busy.
Busy time.
Yeah, great time. Fantastic. Like, fortunate to be in a military at a time of high operational tempo. I think it would have been quite frustrating being in a time where where all you're doing is going on exercises around Australia. Yeah, sorry to the guys and girls that are in now.
Yeah, it's a little bit different now. I've heard people equate it to like training all off season, not getting to play a game type thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and do it for real. So, mate, 08, get back from Iraq. At that point, is that when you went up to Townsville to B34?
Yeah, it would have been end of 08. So we'll come back in 08, went on a big courses period, a couple of exercises in there. Then at the end of 08, get my posting to 3-4 and came up here the start of 09, 9, 10. Yeah, then into 11 into the Fireys. Yeah. And then so when I arrived in Townsville, we were straight into operational sort of capacity again. Like it was still so 3-4. So traditionally 3-4 used to have the old Vietnam era APCs. They were then re-rolled from an armoured personnel from a lift squadron from the platform they had been the old M113 APC to the Bushmaster vehicle. So much better ability to transport troops with protected mobility, but much less firepower. We're going from having 50 cal machine guns in the turret of the 113s to a Mag 58, which is like a much smaller machine gun. So lost a lot of firepower, but gained a lot of protection. And so we were very rapidly evolving our tactics and procedures to meet the current need of Defence Force and current need of the operational tempo. And then along with that, supporting the ongoing commitment to Afghanistan, both in the reconstruction or the move to a mentoring and task mentoring sort of role by then, as well as supporting Special Operations Task Group for drivers for the Bushmasters that they need prior to them. Doing much more airborne sort of helicopter assaults and whatnot. So still quite a busy period there, and courses build up, operations and training as well.
Mate, it sounds like an absolutely hectic time. What was the point for you then, noting that it was busy? When did the Fireys come into the frame?
I'd always wanted to join. I actually always wanted to join the police from a fairly young age, actually. So I always knew that was going to be my door out of military and I wanted to join the police, out of school. But I also knew that you need life experience. You can't have an 18-year-old rocking up to, a 40-year-old couple's house and trying to give them life advice when they're having an argument about. I knew that was never an option at a young age. I wanted to go and get some life experience first, and so that's another reason that led me down the military path. So when I came back from Iraq, was really starting to get dejected with military leadership, poor management, poor leadership. Heard that 3-4 had some really good it only being a squadron-sized unit, was a much more tight space to be in. So I was pretty excited to be a part of that. But by this stage, the wheels started turning in my head that I knew that I needed an out, that the military was not going to be a career for me. And so I put an application in for the Fireys and the Coppers at the same time. I knew that I had to transition to something that was still going to have a semi-regimented sort of a life. Like, you can't spend, even if you spend the basic or the minimum commitment of 4 years to the military, you've still developed a lot of that military mentality, into the sort of person you're going to become. And I'd seen lots of people get dejected with leadership and management within the military and make a split second decision to discharge, but to discharge into nothing that was meaningful for them. And then 12 months later, be back in the military and even more dejected because now they feel disappointed in themselves. So I knew I had to find something that was going to keep me out of the army, and keep me fulfilled in the sort of person that I am as well. So knew that Fireys Coppers was going to provide that sort of a lifestyle. When I was in the military, I did the typical young digger thing and blew my money on fast cars and fast bikes, and fast bikes got me into a lot of trouble on the road and a few fines that precluded me from joining the police for a while. So Fireys didn't really seem to care about that. So it was, I was off the Fireys instead.
Fireys by default.
So, mate, I'm just interested, and it comes up often when we do talk to ex-defence. When you're involved in certain deployments, like, you can hear the tone in their voice. It's excitement. It's this, and then similarly, they talk about that exit plan. Like, do you go into and probably a good question for you both, do you go into the military with that end date in mind? Like, this is only going to be a 10-year career, 20-year career? Or is it things that happen along the way that go, you know what, this isn't me? Because it's strange for me that there's so much love for it when you're doing those sort of, high-risk activities, and then all of a sudden it's like, I've got to look for an exit plan. What's that... reasons behind that, I guess? Is it a certain thing that happens, or is it just something that, look, I can't keep doing this forever, I need to start focusing on getting out?
For me, there was never a predefined period of how long I was going to be in there for, or how long I wasn't going to be in there for. Like, I was teenager when I joined, and I was in my early 20s, and I was up to my early 20s until I got out. I got out at 26. Cognitively, when you think about, the whole frontal cortex of your brain and all that sort of stuff, that isn't fully developed until you're 25 as a male. So you're still finding out who you are, you're still, to put it into, my stupid brain's way of figuring something out, you're still running the stupid out of that horse, like I was still running the stupid out of myself until I reached that point in my life where, I had a bit more clarity and knew who I was and what I wanted to be. I've always had a real sense of what's right and wrong and sticking up for, what's right and wrong. And that's what started leading me down the path of wanting to get out of the army because, there's plenty of double standards in the army. If you're a soldier, there's plenty of double standards between being a soldier and people in the rank above you. And the old saying, there's no standard like a double standard, that applies to the military like you wouldn't believe. Like, it's not do as I do, it's do as I say. And don't worry about what I do. You're like, well, if you want to, and so this is where my passion for sort of leadership and wanting to be, the leader that you wanted at that point in your life really started playing into who I was going to become in the next 20 years. In that, leading by example and, pulling the team along, not pushing them. And the military didn't have that. There was small elements of it that did, but on the whole, military leadership was terrible, and that's come so much in the forefront in the last 10 years. Like, you look at the IGADF and what's happened from the top, from the highest levels all the way down, and them just trying to keep pushing that under the rug or blame it on someone else and push it on someone else rather than taking accountability themselves or professionalism themselves or being cowards and then trying to blame it on someone else. that absolutely boils my blood. The way that it went down there, and I knew I had to go and do something that. Well, the military's got two pathways of going in. You either join as an officer, or you join as a digger or a soldier. Whereas so there's always that divide of soldiers ultimately know better than a brand new officer. Whereas in the fires, police, ambos, whatever it be, everyone started from a recruit course. Everyone's come from the same spot. And it's not to say that there's not shit leaders in the fires, the coppers. There's plenty of them too, but it's better. It's better, and there's more accountability in those organisations. So I knew I had to go to some of that. I knew I couldn't stay in the army. It wasn't going to be a long term thing for me.
I can imagine too that'd be hard. Like you're in combat, you're putting yourself at huge risk, and that letdown from above that must play heavy. It's not like a normal job where you're going into an office 9 to 5 and copping a bit of flack from management, and
Well, to give you an example, so I think this is why our Afghan trip was so good, because within our security task group, we had amazing leadership. We had bosses who were prepared to take the fight to the enemy rather than withdraw, like a previous deployment had done. It was as soon as there was a sign of any sort of contact or incident, it was pack it all back in and head back to base. Whereas our leadership was the opposite. It's like, no, we're staying, we're going to fight, or we're going to find the fight as well. We're going to draw them in, and we did, and it was fantastic. Whereas opposed to then going to Iraq, had some terrible leaderships and calls that put guys in danger, in very real risk. We saw one guy. He was shot. We were in a very small contact. We were engaged by an RPG team from a berm. And one of the rounds ricocheted off his helmet and knocked him out in the back of the. So me and this guy were shooters in two different vehicles, and no Kazivac was called in. Like we pulled up at the next at the next location, and getting a very informal brief that someone's been hit by, someone's been shot, and we're like, well, why did this not come through earlier? And it's because the commander of that vehicle wasn't following his procedures and trying to hide his own inadequacies. There was times where there was one instance where we were pulled up in a hide. We'd escorted some key leaders out for the opening of a water treatment plant, and so we were sitting off in a hide about 2 kilometres away, and we started getting ICOM reports that there was going to be a white Toyota Corolla coming past us shortly, which was going to be observing us for indirect fire. So in other words, that car was going to call back to their mates who were on a mortar team, who were then going to start dropping bombs on us. And sure enough, so we all mounted up, stood to. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, this car pulled up. Two of our vehicles, two of our ASLAVs, broke hide and went and intercepted the vehicle, and we pulled them. So pulled them out, got out, guns up, whole lot, yelling at them to get out of the car. They wouldn't get out of the car. All the hallmarks of being the bad guys. Pulled them out. They're actually wearing Iraqi police uniforms, which I did notice at the time, but didn't really mean anything to me. There's nothing to say they hadn't just been down a local checkpoint, shot up a bunch of coppers and taken their uniforms, which is ironically what happened, to try and put us off the scent. So I'd grab these guys. He wouldn't get out of the car, so I've grabbed him by his hair, pulled him out through the window of the driver's seat. And as soon as one of our warrant officers has seen they're wearing Iraqi police uniforms, he's like, stop. No, they're Iraq police. I'm like, no, we don't know that. Right now, the int is suggesting to us that it's a white Toyota Corolla that came past 2 minutes after we've just received an int brief that we're about to get mortared or observed for indirect. This fits the bill. And then I got dragged. So me and this British guy that was attached to us, we got dragged over the coals for 2 or 3 days that we'd caused this international incident, when in actual fact, we probably, through the actions of our crew, had probably just stopped us getting indirected. And so my sort of bitterness had started to sort of creep in pretty heavily then. Yeah.
My theory on that, on to your question, Jando, and as well, Luke, the Army does a really, really good job of when you first join up to get to drink the Kool-Aid. So, you know, as you said, Luke, like you're young. Most people are young when they join up and they come into the fold, and you've got a new family, and they're going to look after you, and all this sort of stuff. And I guess it comes as probably a bit of a surprise and a bit of a shock when that same quote unquote family, the people that they've said they're going to look after you all the time, start doing things to you that are crossing your morals or your expectations, like the stories that you just said, Luke. And I think for me anyway, that's what I sort of take away, is that's why you can have that. I love it so much, but I've got to go.
Yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head there. Yep.
Because it's hard. And emergency responders are exactly, or not exactly, but to a similar level, the same as well. Because those sort of messages are there. The training's different, and it's not as, I wouldn't say that Kool-Aid's as intense. Maybe there's a little bit watered down, but it's still there. Still that exposure for moral injury.
I was just going to say, now we're looking at crossing into that moral injury sort of area. Going against.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's all too common, mate. We have these chats with anyone who's been in, and for a lot of it, that driver to leave is exactly what you said, mate. It's so-and-so has made this decision or not made this decision.
100%. It seems to be the same in any sort of government organisation. Like, through osmosis, poor leaders and managers seem to raise to the top, and the good hard hitters and people who are worthwhile either stay at the level they're at or they leave because they're just so frustrated by it. And so it's a confliction between do I stay and beat my head against a brick wall and be there for the guys that I wanted to be there for me at your own mental detriment, or do you go fuck it? Sorry, we let it swear on this podcast. yeah. You say fuck it, I'm out, and go into something else. But then the internal confliction of leaving something you love so much and feeling like a bit of a failure.
Yeah, mate. Well, and look, ultimately you did make that decision, to look after yourself and step away through the fireys. How was that process, mate? Like, when did you identify you wanted to go fireys, and how long did it take for you to transition across?
I started my application just prior to posting up to Townsville, so that would have been the end of 2008. Again, being a young digger, I was madly in love with an exotic dancer from the Gold Coast, and thought that was the next chapter of my life, and thank Christ it wasn't. So 100% filling the stereotype of a young, cashed-up digger having a great time on return from your second deployment. Yeah, and luckily it was didn't fall into sort of any of the traps that could create later on with her. It happened with something else, but anyway, that's another story. So yes, I thought, I'll join the Coppers of the Fires and stay around Brisbane or the Gold Coast. And I got the posting up to Townsville, which changed the plans a bit, which ultimately was for the best. At the same time, when I got to Townsville, I applied to go become a load master on the helicopters in the Army. So for those listening at home, a load master is what you would think is a door gunner on a movie. So I did the testing for that. Never thought I was that smart. I actually went and got myself a tutor and got myself a bit of tutoring in maths and stuff, because you had to do some pretty fine night calculations on the run as a load master in terms of load, weight, fuel, torque you can pull on, all those sorts of things. So I went and got myself educated in that to try and get myself positioned in that role. And so I passed all the tests, like a pretty lengthy selection process to get that, and it involved some pretty hard maths tests and psychological exams. So I managed to pass that, and they also said at the same time that if I did another couple of tests, I might qualify to be a pilot. I thought, yeah, why not? So I went and did those tests, passed them to my absolute I couldn't believe I didn't think I was that smart. Went to the tests and then got all the way through the final med board of the aviation med board. And because I'd had a couple of knee operations, they said, no, you're not suitable to be a pilot. Keeping in mind that I was already still doing a combat role in the Army, carrying heavy packs, doing the monthly or 6 monthly testing that was required of that, because the Army Aviation's reasoning behind why I couldn't be a pilot was because you had to do the combat survival course, which is where they just dump you in the middle of the bush to simulate your aircraft's gone down and you have to escape and evade, which involved navigating over, 10, 20, 30 kilometres, clean skin, no pack, no anything. So that was their reasoning, because they were worried about my knee, whereas Big Army was still happy for me to go and do 15-kilometre pack marches every 6 months to pass the combat fitness assessment. So again, that whole double standard and stuff, I was like, man, this is just so stupid. Like, I'm like, fine, I'll go be a load master then. And they're like, no, you can't do anything aviation related. So I was like, oh, and then so I had another trip. We're rotating up for another trip to the Ghan. And then the Fireys sort of just stepped in at the right time and said, hey, look, you've got an application in to go to Townsville or to Brisbane. Would you like to go to Bowen? If you put in Bowen, you can go in the next recruit course. And it kind of just came at exactly the right time. I was so dejected with the military, and just, yep, get me out, put me in, coach. So May 2011, pulled the pin and started at the academy.
So pretty much straight away you went from defence straight into fire.
Yeah. Yep. Took 6 weeks leave. Took any leave I had in my book. Didn't cut ties completely. Stayed as a reservist or an active reserve. And then you went down to Brisbane and started my recruit course with the Fireys down there for, 4 months or something. Yeah.
So, how did you go on that recruit course, being that you were a little bit dejected with let's just say the hierarchy in leadership management, military? I guess were the expectations that the fire service would be better? Yeah,
definitely. So I was really excited. I was really, really excited for a new adventure, a new chapter in my life. Like, I was still only 26, so I still had a lot of living to do. I'd run that stupid out of me and was ready to, serve, do a job where, your operational tempo is every day. Like, whereas in the military, you only get to go and do your job when you go overseas for real. Whether it be fires, ambulance, police, you're doing your job every day, whether that just be to an alarm activation or, a house fire or a fatal car accident, whatever. That was what was exciting to me, to have a job that you could do and be putting the skills to the test every day. There was a much more of a reward for the training. So really exciting. So when I got to the academy, didn't find it too difficult in terms of, the mentality or anything. Like, the Army had already instilled what, a hard recruit course or, tough conditions are. So I remember when I got the address of where the accommodation was for the recruit course, I was expecting it to be, multi-story block room, 4-door room. And I rocked up to the docks on Goodwin at Kangaroo Point with a balcony looking straight down the Brisbane River and a meal ticket to the Story Bridge Hotel every night. Like, I was like, man, this is unbelievable. Like, this is better than the Air Force. Just really excited to, to start learning a whole new skill that is going to translate into, serving community and doing those sort of things again, that people that have the same mentality as most of us that have been military or emergency services have, of, that need to serve. And it was really exciting. Didn't find anything, there was nothing really that I found frustrating about it. It was actually really enlightening to be there, and the instructors were all really knowledgeable, great bunch of people on the course. I had a really small course, 14 people on our course. Great bunch of instructors. There was always a reason of why you did something, and I thought it was well explained. And I found that a lot through my whole career in the fire service, that the courses were actually pretty good, and there was definitely a why to, and there was an outcome to why you were learning it, and there was a reason behind it, and it's through lessons learned, and that's always evolving every day, every week, every month, because we go to jobs and we're able to just adapt all the time, whereas in the military, you're only adapting every 10 years in operational tempo.
Did you have anyone already in the job, the Fireys, before you put the application in?
Yeah, you guys know him, Acco, Eric Atkinson. Yeah, so I was talking to, Acco was in the cavalry as well, and I kind of sort of followed the same path of him. Like, he was on an Afghan deployment and, almost stepped off the plane and straight in the fire service. So, reached out to him a fair bit through the whole process, and I still talk to him now and stuff. So he was the only real guy I knew in the job. There's a few guys I knew in police and stuff, but Acco was the only bloke I really knew in the fire service, but was very current in. So that was handy.
Yeah, handy to get a bit of an understanding before you sort of go into it, so there wasn't that many surprises.
Social media, Facebook had kicked off by then, and he had a couple of photos on his Facebook from when he was at the recruit course. And you're like, man, this looks sick. Like abseiling off a big blue tower, and holding these big hoses, and it's like this stuff you dream of when you're a kid. And it was like it was great. Like, and it's still, like, and I still think it's great.
And you got through that recruit course, obviously quite, you were quite competent, and you didn't see any great challenges.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. Yeah. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a whole new skill set, whole new direction of my life, and shaped the next 15 years of my life and to where I am now. And there was heat, and like as much as I was dejected with the army, I was so glad that I had that 10 years in that, because like the army just puts you through the worst of situations. Lives in the worst conditions. Later in my career, I'll go on and do a swiftwater rescue course, and you get put up at the Mission Beach Hotel every night, a can of feed and a beer or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 every night, and then as you're driving up the Tully River every morning, you drive past the jungle training wing, and you see all the guys there doing the bayonet assault course, suffering from prickly heat, just absolutely sucking it up. Being like, and the guys that are on this course that haven't been in the military going, oh man, it's going to be a cold day and this is going to suck. I'm like, no, this is great. It's going to be cold today, but we're going home for a warm shower, hot feed, and a cold beer. And we're getting paid like overtime to be doing it. So I'm so glad that as much as I was dejected, I'm so glad I had that basis, because nothing's ever going to suck more than anything I did in the military.
Sets the bar nice and low, mate. So you're pleasantly surprised for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mate, recruit course up to Bowen, that is considered a regional sort of posting. What was it like walking in on shift up there?
Awesome. Yep. Really good. Really exciting. Very much ready for it. Got the old, structure. I actually got the structure for on my first day. Like we're literally doing starter shift checks and showing me what's what in the station, where to put my gear and where this is. And sure enough, bells drop, smoke coming from a house. It's been like, holy fuck, like, this is unreal. Yeah, been like, this is unreal. Like, this is what I wanted. When I was at the recruit course, some people were like, oh, it's going to be so quiet in a regional town, and, it's going to be shit, you're not going to enjoy it. I'm like, oh, whatever. Cool. I'm going, you're not. Like, I'll make my own decision up on that. And I was like, oh, do I want to go to Brisbane or Townsville and, a major centre and stuff? And I did. And I was a little bit apprehensive about going to what I thought would be a quiet location, but it's not. The regional centres, for any emergency service, I would say, are the best place to learn your trade quickly, because you are it. Like there is, like in Brisbane, Townsville, Cairns, Rocky, wherever, you've got backup coming. Whereas in those small towns, it's you and 3 other guys or girls. And you've got no choice but to adapt quickly and just suck it up, be tractors, and just keep on chugging. You don't have to be fast, but you just got to keep chugging. And I thrive off that sort of environment. Like I've learned over the years that I absolutely thrive in small teams, small towns. Loved it. Yeah, loved it. The guys at the station that I was with were all, like, none of us were even first class. Like there was our station officer who was acting up, long-term acting senior firefighter, but had oodles of experience in the job. And then there was, a second-class firey, a third-class fire in me in the back. Like it's just so unheard of in terms of, like you'd never have that rostered to a truck in a major centre. But so you just did it. And then so when I did eventually post up to a major centre, was flabbergasted at how they rostered. You're like, oh, you can't have 2 juniors in the truck together. I'm like, man, we had 3. Like I was driving the truck on turnout in my 3rd tour. Like, yeah. And again, so I really appreciate having that experience prior to going to a bigger centre, and it was like really appreciate military service prior to going to the fire is like it just grounds you, I think.
All worked in. So
And you get to
Bowen,
go to every job too. Like you don't, like in Townsville, for example, when you knock off work, you don't go to every job. Whereas when you're in those little towns, you go to every single job because you're on call. Well, in Bowen anyway, you're on call after hours. So if it was a big job, you never missed it. So experience-wise, just was great.
So was that a day station, Lukey, or was that a 10-14 roster?
Nah, day station, yep, and still is. So, and financial benefits to that has always been on call and the on-call rate and stuff. Like, yeah, as a junior fire, it was good. It wasn't too much of a financial hit.
So this is 2011. Is Luke still single at this stage, or has Luke got a family?
No, Luke was newly married. And yeah, but so we were still living in towns when I was driving back and forward, just like drive in, drive out for my 4 on 4 off. I was newly married, but mate, there's more chapters than Harry Potter to that story. So
How long did you stay in Bowen for doing the drive in, drive out gig?
2 years. I did 2 years down there, and then got a position back up in Townsville. There was a couple of medical things going on with my partner at the time that was making it hard to go back and forward. Like, I wanted to stay in Bowen, but it just wasn't going to be feasible for us at the time. So yeah, 2 years later, came up to Townsville, and then kept doing. So I think I was second class by then, getting ready to come up to first class. And I'd heavily inject myself into the rescue space then, level 2 rescue space then as well. So, and then so for the next probably 10 years, spent in Townsville and going through the process of going through my first class exams and then senior firefighter exams, finishing off all the suite of level 2 rescue courses, and going through that sort of phase, like having kids and all that sort of stuff. There was a stage there where I'd stayed in the military, I'd stayed in the Army Reserves. It didn't look like we were going to be able to have kids at times. Sort of decided, I was getting a little bit, to be honest, I was actually getting a little bit bored with the fire service. Like, I went through this really low tempo period of like no jobs, and I was like, man, this is getting boring. I want to go back to Bowen, or I want to go back to the Army. So I've actually made the call and put an application in to go back to the Army and do a selection course, but then we ended up falling pregnant, and so pulled that application and stayed in the fire service and became a dad.
How good. Everything happens for a reason.
100%. I am a big advocate of everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
It certainly sounds that way. Even up until this point, we've been talking to you, mate. Everything sort of has happened for a reason. Did you got a little bit bored in Townsville? Is that what led to sort of jumping on the level 2 stuff, or was that prior to that period?
I think I've always had a want to learn as much as I can in particular fields, and the level 2 stuff always appealed to me, especially the vertical rescue side of things. And I go on in my career to really hone in on that area. But the pathway for that is through Swiftwater. So I just saw what the path was and just started following it, and loved it. I'd never been a swimmer, so I had to learn how to swim to pass the entrance, the swimming test to get in. Never really done any sort of work in flowing water, so it was just this whole space that I'd sort of always thought it'd be cool, and now getting the opportunity to do it and just drinking the Kool-Aid, like you say. But then again, having the operation, having the instructors have the operational experience, have done the jobs, been through, things like recently the 2011 floods and the board of inquiry behind that, and then watching it all evolve, and like it was just such a good time to be in that space and adopting those things that are being implemented and providing feedback on it. And, it was so good. I look back on that so fondly. Yeah. And then going on doing my vertical rescue course, and then confined space and trench. Not that we go to those jobs. Sorry to the confined space and trench instructors. And USAR, and again, USAR wanted a USAR course. It wasn't that long before that the team, the Oz one, had been over to Christchurch. So you could see why you're doing stuff. Like, it was Yep. Great.
Oh, that's cool, mate. And, once you did all those courses, did that change your role as a fire? Like, did you have to go and do anything extra or change your job role, or were you still riding the trucks in Townsville?
Yeah, no. For the listeners home, yeah, so in Queensland, the way that it's structured is that everyone still rides a normal fire truck, which you'd associate as what a fire truck looks like, rolling out the door of a fire station. And you take on the extra skills. So you're still primarily a firefighter day to day, but you take on an extra skill set that sits alongside your firefighting skill set. And you are then designated to or rostered to a designated rescue station where you'll be working with other people who are qualified in level 2 rescue, as well as still responding to the normal jobs we go to as firefighters. You just have an additional response and maybe some extra, or you do have extra equipment and vehicles and stuff to check and whatnot as well to meet the requirements for your skill set to complete those jobs.
Any like notable jobs or things that stand out to you, noting that that part of the state cops a fair bit of weather yearly throughout the wet season and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. Those heaps. Like, obviously, swiftwater is such a prevalent thing, especially in Queensland. Like you say, we see monsoonal rain and cyclones yearly, and it's something that we're getting pretty well versed at now in preparing for and responding to and recovering from. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, like a government line, but it's it is what we're doing, and we've implemented over quite a number of years now, and are getting to the pointy end of doing it well. In terms of job, I've been so lucky to deploy on heaps of inter and intrastate deployments. Like one of the real favourite ones I did was going up to Cooktown for Cyclone Nathan, and being again working in a tiny community up there and providing capability to a small town. We had the 2019 floods here in Townsville. That was wild. I think in 5 days, I think we worked every single day for 5 days, and the hours we're doing were crazy, and heap of rescues and stuff inside of there. There's one in particular on the big night, I think it was a Sunday night, which is when the dam walls were opened and we knew that it was going to be on. We'd just come back onto our normal shift rotation after doing 3 or 4 days of overtime as part of crews, and they'd briefed us in the morning that if these two cells had combined, then this is what was going to happen. And I remember listening to it going, surely that's not going to happen. Like that's so catastrophic. And that's what happened. Come 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, me and my offsider were on the rescue crew that day. So it was only 2 of us on a fire truck, what we call a Lima. Whereas we had a whole bunch. We had a small element that had deployed up from south. It needed to be more. Like it was very much a case of too little, too late. Of the support that we needed, and that was how no one died during that is like just pure luck in my opinion. Thankfully, like the army stepped in big time and had their own craft and stuff and vehicles that could ford quite deep, and like without them, I think it would have been a very different story. But 2 particular incidents on that night. So we found they're going to release the dams. They'd split all the rescue crews onto the north and south side of the town, and we'd been sent over to a location to evacuate a lady out of an apartment block. To get there, we had to go across this street that normally, obviously, you drive down, but this resembled what looked like the training environment on the Tully River. And all we had was a small raft, and only the 2 of us. And we walked and paddled this craft over to get this lady. The water had kept rising in that time, and then as we had got her in the craft, we sort of tried to convince her to stay and go to a higher level apartment, but for whatever reason she didn't want to, so we didn't really know where to take her, so we just paddled her back across this street, this stream. And at the same time, I remember seeing a bushmaster vehicle driving through just before we went across, and I remember shouting at him, "Can you take her?" And he's like, "No, we've all been recalled back to the barracks." I'm like, man, it's about to get even worse, and he's going like, what, he's knocking off, like. So anyway, I paddled her back across onto some dry ground, got her up to a higher spot. A council truck had arrived, a council tip truck, so we popped her in that council tip truck. And then there was a rural fire truck that was getting recovered backwards by an army bushmaster who had driven into this stream and conked out. And then someone else shouting to us, there's someone else just driven into the water. And the light was just dropping by this stage. And me and my partner were already exhausted. Hadn't really eaten, and we'd just been going from job to job to job all day. Turned around and saw this Prado driving into the water, and our little raft had floated off. We hadn't pulled it up on the bank enough, and so it just sort of floated off. Where's our raft gone? I could see it down the distance, and I said to these two rural fires, hey, can you guys go down and grab our raft for us? And I said to my partners, come on, let's just go down. And like the water where the Prado was about waist deep. So I sort of did that, that quick dynamic risk assessment. Went, nah, we can at least take some action. And because the water was flowing, so the Prado driven in, it was starting to float and then float down towards, wherever, into this the low ground. So got there, got to the Prado, opened the doors, and there was a nan and a pop, or two elderly people probably in their 70s in the front seat, and two really young children in the back seat. Luckily, when we opened those doors, and this is sort of some learning that came out from this later on, as we open the doors, when the doors are shut, the car's buoyant because it's a sealed environment. When we open the doors, it allows water to flow in, which then pushed it to the ground and gave it some stability. So we sort of alleviated one hazard without even realising we were going to do it, but it was great. The poor kids in the back were terrified. So I looked at my partner, who's probably about 50 to 60 kilos wringing wet, but has a heart bigger than Farlap. Like, this girl is just unbelievably tough. Like, you want to talk about a tractor? Like, she invented Massey Ferguson, I reckon. Like, so I said to her, like, we didn't have any life jackets for them. So I'm like, very quickly in my head, the time it felt like it was taking forever, trying to make a decision in my head of whether we leave them in the car and God knows what will happen, or we take the risk, grab these kids and get them to some dry ground. And like, there was some stuff that came out of the 2011 flood inquiries where this decision went bad, and it had a big effect to the guys that are involved. Like, and this is not a critical thing at all. Like, there's no right or wrong decision in this aspect. Like, it's a roll of the dice. You stay there and do nothing, and so do you stand there and do nothing by your procedures and back yourself by your procedures to try and cover your ass, or do you go, nah, fuck this, like, I can't stand here and do nothing, like, we've got to do something, and at least I know if it goes wrong, I did all the best I could, and put my hand on my heart and do that. So anyway, said to Coops, like, hey, come on, let's grab them, let's go. We'll just ball up, we'll just link arms, we'll ball up, and we'll just push back into this current with these kids and fucking hope for the best. And that's what we did. And then it came off. Thankfully, it came off. So got them back up in this rural fire truck had been recovered by this stage, and we'd sort of had some people inside of this. A whole bunch of other people sort of got themselves in there to get dry, and so just grabbed people. I'm like, get out, put these kids in there to get them dry. Gave them another old lady saying, hey, just look after these kids, and we're going back to get Nan and Pop. And then at the same time, the rural guys had found our boat for us. We'd paddled back down, got Nan and Pop, tucked them in the raft, and then got them out of there. But at the same time we're getting Nan and Pop out, the dad of these kids has arrived and is now walking this water next to us, trying to bash his dad because he's so pissed off at his dad for driving into this water with his kids. Yeah, so I'm trying to stop him bashing his dad and get them back. Oh man, it was chaos. And at the same time, like, all this stuff happened. At the same time, we had priority calls coming in from another crew over another part of town where police had driven into the water and been washed off and were sitting up in trees, and like, it was all bad. Ambulance that was stuck in water, and just a real intense little period. Like, it was cool. And so you're just doing what you have to in the moment. Like, you're relying on your skills and your judgment and your procedures, but also having to adapt on the fly as well. And then directly after that, got another job to go to a guy who was hypoglycemic in a house not far from where we were. The paddle there had been really good because it was going with the current. And this guy crashed really bad. The ambulance were trying to get him for 3 or 4 hours. And then it's on the radio trying to get a helicopter to come winch him off the roof. The helicopter's like, nah, we're not coming. It's too risky at the moment. And then so having to then take the boat back up to where our so I'd call for a motorised boat to come. Then realised we had to then get our raft back up through that high flow environment we just come down. So then having to sort of leave the raft, jump to a light pole, set up a hauling system, haul it to the next one, and just keep leapfrogging that the whole way along to try and finally get to where the motorised craft was. Handing his kid over, and look, he was limp. I thought he was dead, to be honest. And then getting a call a couple months later from, I think it was one of the Today Show people being like, "Oh, I went to do a reunion story," and I said, "Someone you rescued." I said, "Oh, which one?" And she explained it. So I'm like, "Oh," and my words to her were, "Oh, is he still alive?" Yeah. So, yeah, those understand. There's been a couple of good vert jobs.
But in saying that, again, Lukey, it seems to be a lot of that army background that sets you up for that situation. Like those decisions are very hard to make. And we always say that to the younger ones coming through, you're going to have to make decisions and justify why you make decisions. So, would you agree that sort of set you up for that?
Yeah, 100%. So when you do any course in the military, especially as a leadership course, one of the things they instill in you is that any decision is better than no decision. And you might make a decision that's 50% wrong and 50% right, but you're 50% advanced from having no decision. And if you need to adapt that decision later on, then you adapt it then. But you're halfway through a plan already and in a better situation than what you were at the start. And if you need to alter it later on, then you alter it then. But you just do the best you can at the time rather than sort of be stuck there in analysis paralysis. Like, you just got to think on the fly. Yeah, and that's, again, why I really enjoy small town, small team sort of stuff.
Also, you mentioned at the start, Luke, you're very much driven by what's right and what's wrong, and a good sense of that. And it sounds like some of that decision making was based on that as well. Like very, very, sort of tricky to do when you're going against what is, like you said, policy, procedure, and all those sort of things. But morally and ethically, the right thing to do is to do what you did, and it paid off, mate. But it sounds like that was like guiding your decision making as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like I don't know if you listened to the Sean Ryan show where they interviewed Christian Craighead and the actions that he took in Kenya as a sole SAS operator when the hotel over there got taken. Like he took action, and decided to go in on his own with a bunch of local guys to go and rescue all those people inside. And, the old motto of the SAS is who dares wins. And he dared and he won in that instance. But then, you listen to what happened to him afterwards, and it's absolutely abhorrent, like the way they treated him afterwards. But he goes, at the end of the day, I could still send them a hand on my heart and go, I did everything I could, and it came off the best. And even if it didn't, well, I still tried. Like, we left there standing at the end of the day and being like, oh, I could have actually done that and would have made a difference. I think that'd be a worse place to be mentally.
Definitely.
Yeah, at least you, like I said, put your hand on your heart. Know that you tried your best and did the best that you could in any given situation.
Yeah.
It's one question you don't have to ask yourself afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, mate, after things settled down from that hectic little period in 2019, what's next for Luke?
So I think that was around the time I was doing my officer. I was going through my station officer selection and exam and process. And Jando, you were an instructor on, I can't remember, was that 28? I think it was 2018 or 2019 or in the same time.
Around that time.
You've probably done 1,000 courses, mate, and can't remember either.
I remember your course clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was around that time anyway. So the next step for me then was finishing off my station officer selection process, and then sort of starting to bed in as a station officer, and develop that sort of next stage of my career. And it was sort of funny, and I sort of look on the station officer role within the fire service, and quite a lot of emphasis is put on to the role that it is and the importance that it is of managing people. And I think one thing, again, going back to the military, one thing that set me up so well for was that course, because in the military, I joined at 17, so by 22, I was already, promoted up through Lance Corporal and Corporal, and already managing 9 people, in contact, in operational environments overseas and whatnot. So, although I didn't have the political, whereas a station officer, it's a bit more political and driven by policy and procedure and public perception, and it's in your eyes every day because news crews are there and stuff, and a lot more HR stuff as a station officer. I had that man management stuff already behind me from the military, which I think, and from the other guys on the course and other guys that have done it, the same sort of path, for the same life path. I think it sets you up really, really well. And then so when you step into that role as a station officer, all you're managing really is one truck and 3 people. Yes, when you go to an operational job, you go to a big fire or whatever, like, yeah, you could be managing, 20, 30 people. But your day-to-day stuff, like, you're only managing 3 people. It's not that difficult. And it's where, again, it really comes into that small team environment, the ability to communicate, empathise, identify, and knowing your team, what they're going through. And I really thrived on that, like just really creating a work environment that people wanted to be at, felt supported, had value. Like you got to balance it up against doing too much training and burning the guys out, but not on the converse, not having too much time in the chairs watching movies. Like you got to find that good balance and dictating that off who your crews are and what their goals are. So you might have a 35-year veteran of the fire service who has done all that and doesn't particularly want to go out and drill in the middle of the day or whatever, and you've got your new guy coming through. So you have to find that balance, and I really enjoyed finding that and then really engaging all sorts of personalities to meet whatever requirement we had at the time. And it was interesting being stage, 8 or 9, 10 years in the fire service, being a station officer to guys who have been in the job for 20, 30 years and really leveraging off their experience, not thinking that, because in the military you see the young officers come through and it's my way or the highway. And I was like, well, that never works. Like, you need to leverage off your corporals and your sergeants to dictate how, your next battle space is going to be. So I really liked engaging the guys who've been in the job for longer than me of, right, how do we shape this? Let's train, let's do this drill. Then how does that equate into the real world? We've got our baseline sitting here. Yes, we've been assessed at being able to put out a car fire, for example. How does that now adapt into the real world? And now how do we achieve that above the base level here? What can we do better? And, some stuff started coming in towards the end of, in the last few years, of CAFs. So CAFs is a great example of that. And a couple of fires that we've been to, car fires and industrial shed fires, where none of us, we're all on the same level of CAFs, but none of us have really seen it. And putting that stuff to test, right? Well, let's test it. Put some CAFs on that car and see if that puts it out better and keeps it out longer. And it does. And you're like, that's really cool. Like that's results for Or being at those big fires and not being able to get on top of it, what am I doing wrong? And calling on someone who's got more experience and like, oi, Jono, I'm trying this, man. I've got cruising here. What am I not doing? And listening to them and doing that. And I think that's crucial. So I think that's crucial for people coming through in those positions, because if you're going to be a station officer and go through fairly quickly, you need to be able to fall on your sword and know that you don't know it all, that there's plenty of people around you that know more than you. And it might even be someone who's junior to you. So you might be at some sort of, let's say, an electrical hazard job. You might have a third class fire in the back of your truck who's a sparky, and then not having so much pride that you can't ask a junior fire or something. Like, I think it's, there's a lot. You need to be humble. Like, you got to be humble. Yeah. This job, there's too much to do. There's too much in this job. Like, there's too much in this job to be over all of it. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like we don't specialise in anything.
Like you said, mate, the challenge for you or for the station officer position is like managing different years of experience and different skill sets and knowledge, because everybody comes in with a background too, right? No one comes in as a 17-year-old off the street. Everybody has experiences and skills that they're bringing with them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I remember one particular job where I had a very junior fire. It was like his 3rd day on shift, I think it was. And I was doing an overtime, I was doing a callback, and then acting up as a station. I was doing the station process, but so still a senior fire, but acting up for this shift. And I had a guy that had only been on shift for 3 days, and he was only 22, so pretty young to be in the fire service. We got sent in the highway to a fatality, which ended up being a bit of a mess. As we've gone to then, so the guy was deceased on scene, so you have to wait around for the police to finish taking their photos before you remove the deceased from the car. And as we started cutting the car up, there's drugs and money and stuff all through the car, and so this guy's running drugs between towns. So that extrapolates it more, and then so getting this guy out of the car and then going back to the station and seeing some smoke coming from behind the abattoir, thinking, oh, now we've got a grass fire to go to. Getting a call on the radio, thinking, oh, this is going to be for that. Then getting sent to a QAS assist around the corner to assist in a post-hanging with family there. And then so getting there, I won't go into detail too much, but getting him down from where he was, commencing CPR, because he was still, look, he hadn't done it that long ago, so he was still warm. Commencing CPR, getting the ambos there, like getting a pulse back, and so still keeping on. This is the guy's third day on shift. To then getting that job done, back to station, replenish the truck, and then getting a structure fire around the corner from station with person reported inside. Like right on shift changeover. Like the ability to sort of adapt on the fly to those situations. And then, so I had a really experienced guy, I had a really junior guy, I had myself as an acting station officer, so still trying to find my feet as a leader in that environment. And I can't remember who the other guy was in the truck, but like just a big patchwork of guys thrown together that didn't really know each other in this massive day. Well, from that day, I was like, man, like you really need to be able to be humble and adaptive in this job, and like you can't, like, yeah, there's personalities, but you need to leave them at the door sometimes too.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
How did those conversations? Obviously, you're the officer in charge, 22-year-old. How was that conversation?
I never really got the chance to engage with him that day because it was just so busy. It wasn't until the next night. Even coming on the shift the next night, I pulled a shift the next night as well, the same station. We've only been at work for maybe an hour. Hadn't even finished our starter shift checks, and get responded to a CPR assister in the corner, which was also emotionally charged because the gentleman that CPR was being commenced on had a not for resus order, but the family couldn't produce it. So the family is absolutely wild that these two poor young ambos are doing the CPR when he's not for resus, but they're bound by their policy and procedure that they can't stop CPR unless they see the paperwork. And then us rocking up to that, and like these, and say two real junior ambos, not really skilled in how to deal with that sort of a life situation. So then sort of stepping in to advocate for them as well, and then trying to get, my senior firey to then manage the CPR because the ambos are so wrapped up in trying to do their clinical interventions as well as trying to deal with a family, as well as do CPR, and haven't really worked with fireys before and know what capability we can provide to them, which, is just essentially doing chest compressions, but that allows them to start drawing up drugs and get, tube and all that sort of stuff. So then, quickly managing that, going, it's like you've got to be adaptive, hey? And so it wasn't until later that night. Now, we didn't get back to station until 10 o'clock at night, so he's tired, and so I never really got the chance to engage. I wasn't his normal officer. I know him well now, like I see him at the gym every day, and he's still in the job, and he's thriving, like he's absolutely thriving.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good guy. Yeah.
So, mate, for the time we've been talking to you through the podcast today, I want to check my heart rate because the tempo has not stopped from when you're in the army to fire service. When does Luke get time to sit down and chill?
Now.
Today.
Yep. So I'm at the end of my career.
Yeah.
Yeah, at 100% of price. Yeah, at a price, yeah. This is the first time in 25 years that I've ever sat down and taken a breath and taken the time to stop and smell the rose. And I'll just digress a little bit here. So I use the term stop and smell the rose because it relates directly to a story from up here. So in Townsville, we've got this amazing headquarters up here for Northern Region that's in this multi-million-dollar complex that was built by a guy in Townsville who dropped out of school, started an earth-moving business, and is now one of the richest guys in Australia. And same sort of thing, went through his whole life, just go, and became incredibly successful. And when he sort of got to a point, one of the guys he had working for him, who he originally started working for, gifted him this rose, this rare rose from over in Africa. And the meaning behind it was, mate, don't forget to stop and smell the roses. and this guy who owns the building. So then he imported all these crazy expensive roads from Africa and all at the front of his building. The fire service now leases their headquarters up here, but I take a lot away from that story. Like, yeah, it's only now in my life that I've sort of taken a step back and burned out, 100% burned out, but have now the time to stop and smell the roses and sort of take a bit of a check on what the next 20 years is going to look like. And here we are.
So, mate, that this quiet time, I'd imagine that would have been a bit of an adjustment initially.
Yeah, it still is. Initially, it all kicked off back in 2021. Really started noticing signs of the burnout and what would later be diagnosed as PTSD and anxiety and depression. So as a time as a firefighter was pretty low sort of tempo, didn't have too many, but then as I came into being a senior firey and I was seeing in the station office, like everything just seemed to ramp right up and just got with 3 or 4 years of just a lot of, pretty traumatic jobs, both in terms of, families being involved, dealing with personalities, dealing with people, dealing with, the trauma associated with fatal car accidents. And that's what ultimately got me was the car accident sort of things. And I knew that something was wrong. I talked before about that job down with that junior fire. It was that day, I can pinpoint it to that day that I was like, oh man, I can't be bothered. A person, another dead body out of a car. Like this isn't enjoyable anymore. Like I'm not excited about it anymore. But brushed it off then, and then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And we had a really bad job up the high, which actually ended up breaking a few of us for a while, or 2 of us now ultimately for good. But a couple other, hard-hitting fireys that were there broke them for a while too. Big triple fatality. And after that, going off, my nan passed away just after that job was over. So that gave me a good couple of weeks to decompress in the Sunshine Coast. She was old and we were expecting it, and she had a great life, so it was a nice time to reflect. And then coming back to work and knowing I'm pretty burnt out, coming back to work, first day on shift, again, just started shift, haven't finished started shift checks, get responded to a suicide around the corner. A guy jumped off top of a building, and we're the first ones there, no ambos, no coppers. The guy's girlfriend, his best mate, is standing there, hysterical. There's a guy on the ground with the gentleman who had jumped, who's looked like he was trying to do C-spine mobilisation, and this guy's brain is sitting over there, and he wants us to start doing CPR and starts throwing all these pretty fancy medical terms. So I'm starting to think, oh, is this guy a doctor? And I'm like, are you a doctor? And he's like, oh, I'm an anaesthetist from the hospital. I'm like, what do we do? I'm not going to question you. Righto, boys, can we start doing CPR? Give him a hand. And it was that, and just went back to station after that and didn't hang around for long. Like, normally we sort of hang around for a bit just to see if they need us. I didn't even give them an opportunity to say they wanted us. I'm like, hey, we're going to go. See you later. And at that moment, got in the truck and just went, I need to go. So went into the doctor and started the whole process. Took 7 months off work. I got put on a work cover. The way that I was dealt with by management, in my opinion, was pretty terrible. Went to the doctor, got diagnosed, hung up our super, and told him, and his instant reaction was, and I'd asked her, look, can I have a day work role? Can I just get off the trucks for a bit? I don't want to not work. Like work is where my support network is, my boys, my mates, people I can relate to. Like I don't want to be isolated. I just want to come to work and sit in a role where I can, do area support officer or something like that. And it was just instantly met with, no, you have to be on work cover. You can't be at work. And that was just the biggest feeling of rejection that I've had in ever. Like it's up there with some of the biggest moments of rejection in my life and feeling unsupported. Didn't know what work cover was. Had a missus, kids, mortgage. I'm like, what's work cover? I need to pay my mortgage. I need to pay the bills, buy food, do this, put fuel in the car. Didn't know anything of what that was. So I was terrified. And it wasn't until a couple of days later when someone reached out and told me what the process was, when I was like, oh, okay, well that's good. Like I'm financially able to support us. What's the recovery look like? Yeah, I think there needs to be better education around that. Because unless you know it, you don't know what you don't know.
So, Luke, do you think, in saying what you're just discussing, would you say that there's reluctancy to put your hand up from some people out there because of those fears?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, and there's still a stigma attached to it, and I still hold it right now of a feeling of shame of not being able to continue doing the job, and feeling of guilt that I'm not doing it, and the other guys that were on my team still are, and a feeling of weakness that I can't keep doing it, and that's what you got to work through, and what I'm working through now, and I think I'll come through it, but it's a bit confronting in the meantime.
And do you think that that isolation makes it worse, Luke? That moment of rejection. I'm just thinking, you're saying all your support networks there, the people that you identify with, the people that you get along with, all that sort of stuff, and then to sort of get cut out of the tribe. I can only imagine that having that happen increases those feelings of shame, guilt, regret.
Yeah, in that instance, definitely, and a couple of people. So I sort of went off work pretty quickly, and no one really knew what was going on. And a couple of guys, reached out and said, "Mate, you're all right." And I said, "No, look, I'm not. Like, if we're going to push for change, then we need to be leaders in that field, right? If we need to be able to say, no, I'm not, rather than just doing the old, yeah, no, I'm fine. Hey, how you been, mate? Someone's ringing you to ask how you are. If you're not good, well, tell them. If you feel comfortable, tell them that person."
Yep.
And then the question that person asked me in that time was, is it a secret? You're keeping it a secret? Is this common knowledge? So, look, mate, it's probably not common knowledge at the moment, but it can be. Like, I'm not hiding it. I said, like, if people are going to ring me, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm fine. And I don't care if people are talking about it at work, because, at that stage, I didn't know if I was coming back then. But I was thinking, if and when I do come back, I want people to know that, especially the junior fireys, and they haven't experienced this sort of stuff before, that they know that one of their leaders or SOs has been through this openly, that they can come to me and be like, hey, this sucked about that, and I'm feeling this. I know you went through it. Is this normal? To have that person that you can relate to. And, a lot of us, and I'll put myself in this category, are quite stoic, alpha sort of people, high, big personality, big sort of personality people. And those people, I know as a junior, you look at them, you're like, I can't go talk to him.
Yeah.
He's big and scary, and that's not, and there's a place for that. And there's also, I think that's definitely needed in a leader. Like, you need a little bit of, stoicism and alpha, even a little, maybe a little element of narcissism in a leader as well. But that's got to be tempered with empathy and, and openness as well. Yeah. You got to find that right mix between Donald Trump and the and the Pope.
Put that in the training package.
Yeah.
Donald Trump and the Pope. Mate, on that, in the lead up to, you going off work, he said, like, you pinpointed that day, you're going to that car crash and you were just not up for it. Is there anything else, do you think, that would have moved the needle prior to? And I'm thinking things like, debriefs and, hot washes and all that sort of stuff. Was that happening? And is there anything else that you think would have maybe helped in the lead up?
So we already have those processes in place in writing. How that translates into real world are two different things. AARs, after action reviews, are one of the best ways to address an incident that occurred, identify what was good, bad, how to improve for next time. And we talk, we do our senior fireys exams, and we do a debrief as part of that assessment process. We talk about now, this is an opportunity to bag someone out or point out fault or blame.
Mm-hmm.
We need to put that, people still see, in my opinion, that AAR as an opportunity to lay blame. And that's where we need to take our own personality and put that aside and have education on how to do that as well. So AARs were first invented for fighter pilots because the need for, the amount of money it costs to put a fighter plane up in the air is substantial, and they can't afford to keep doing drill. So they have to be able to do effective AARs. So the next time they go and get in that cockpit and do whatever maneuver they're going to do, or they've already drilled it and talked about it without personalities or without any malice behind it in a training room. I used to love trying to implement that in the fire service, the big jobs we'd been to, or any sort of job. The difficulty you come across is that trying to do that while you're operationally on shift and distracted by other calls, training commitments, sick leave, all that sort of stuff, it makes it very, very hard. So I think the organisation could probably do that better. And we have, these critical incident stress debriefs. I don't think they're handled very well. I think they need to be done in a different environment. I think every single one of them, whether they're a critical incident or not, need to be done off shift, or have, I know in Brisbane you guys have training pumps and stuff in there. Up here, like, we don't, and in the regional areas you don't. But I think there needs to be an element of where that is done completely free of any operational commitment, and you are taken off you're taken off the ORBAT for that period of time, for 2, 3, 4 hours, and it's put into, to OMS, to what our operating, what our day looks like, and it is put in there, and it's, it's a mandatory. We got a lot of mandatory things that we do that aren't really mandatory. There's a lot of things that aren't that should be.
Yeah, nice. I think 100%. If we could debrief better, that would put us in a better place. Probably not only operationally, but personally as well. It provides that opportunity for people to get those things out of their head, off their chest, and out into the open, in a constructive way. So I think 100% right.
And the way that everyone sees things is different too. Like, the way, all three of us, we go to an incident now, the way Jando sees it, the way that I see it, the way that you see it, are three different ways. And there was something I missed that someone else saw. So it puts the pieces of the puzzle back together, and gives you the opportunity to close that off and file that inside your brain, which is what EMDR does, in the moment, rather than it building up and becoming a complex PTSD diagnosis down the track. Yep.
So on that, you said you're off for 7 months the first time?
Yes. Yep.
Mate, what did that look like for you? What did that
it's a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists. A bit of time to reset. I was going through a pretty toxic relationship at the time as well, which didn't make things good at all. I probably would have been better off staying at work. But in terms of mentally, so I started doing cognitive processing therapy, I think it's called, which wasn't working for me. And then got another old military friend of mine talked about EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization, which works in either your eyes just following a pen in front of you. So they'll take you back into the moment of whatever that trauma is, or multiple. They'll pick one, and either following a pen or something, or having bilateral tones through headphones. And then you basically so you go back to the moment it started, you relive the whole thing, and you stop at a moment where you first start getting that bodily reaction, whether that be that feeling in your gut, that tugging at your heart, that tingling in your arm, whatever it may be, and you pause in that moment there, and then you just keep living it and living it and living it until the emotional reaction stops. So I started doing that in that time, and that worked pretty well. I was really stuck around 3 or 4 particular incidents at that time, and worked through them, and wanted to get back to work. Like, was rushed it, to be honest with you. And got myself back to work, and then got back to work and was anxious, really anxious about how I was going to perform. Never had any issues about how performing on the fire ground at a fire or a grassy or rescue job, or it was just always, I'm like, how am I going to react to the next car accident? And there was a lot of guilt around one particular job where it was at night time, and I'd called on our DMO to grab us some meals, and I'm standing at the back of our DMO's ERV vehicle eating his hamburger, and this bloke starts walking in the road, and I'm like, who's that guy? And he's like, oh, he's the dad of that guy's girlfriend, and he's a copper. So here I am eating this fucking hamburger while poor old father-in-law was having to walk down to this car accident scene and identify his son-in-law in the vehicle, like the biggest feeling of guilt that look, I couldn't eat hamburgers for ages. Like, yeah. So I was always anxious about how I was going to perform in a job, and there's other accidents where I've been to where a car had been hit, and there was a whole bunch of items inside that car that the same as what my kids had, same car seat, came bag, shoes, a whole lot. And this mum was deceased on the side of the road, and freaking out, thinking there's going to be a kid inside of in the bush somewhere that's been ejected, because mum was ejected from the vehicle. There was no kid in the seat. I'm like, well, where's the kid? And then so anxious about searching this bush, scrub beside the side of the road, trying to find this kid, but putting the face of my son to this kid, not even my bloody kid. And then the nightmares that it creates, and the disturbed sleep patterns, and that was hard. And then so the anxiety of going back to work, I wonder how I'm going to deal with that, and subsequently got the opportunity to apply for a role up in Thursday Island, and took the took the role of OIC of Fire and Rescue on Thursday Island up in the Torres Straits for 2 years, limiting my exposure to it, which worked really well. It was great. Best time, probably the best 2 years of my working career, working up there. And again, small, tiny team environment of auxiliary firefighters, part-time firefighters in probably the most remote fire station in Australia, the most isolated fire station in Australia, with the cultural significance and stuff like that. Like, it was such an amazing time of my life. But then ultimately coming back to Townsville and re-injecting myself into the regular firefighting scene again, and that anxiety creeping back in again, and managed to get myself a day work role doing rescue coordination, and then having that ripped out from underneath me, someone less qualified put into that role. So, here comes back this feeling of, rejection and poor management decisions, and do as I say, not as I do. And then tell me I've got to go back on the trucks, and then just go, nah, that's it. And that was it. So that was probably 4 months ago. And told my boss then, so look, I'm in that conversation of that phone call, saying, look, I'm booking off. I'm going home sick. And he's like, oh, you back tomorrow? I was like, nah, probably not. And he's like, when are you coming back? And I said, probably never. And here I am. Still not back at work with a beard and long hair.
That's a big decision to arrive at, mate. And I imagine knowing that and saying that are two different things as well. And voicing
massive, mate. It's massive. And I'm only sort of starting to come to that realisation now of how massive it is. Like, I actually had coffee this morning with a long-time friend and one of the PSOs up here as well, and sort of just talking around that. And there's still a big feeling of weakness around that. And you talk to him about it and talk to my psych about it, and she's like, well, why are you feeling weakness about it? Why aren't you feeling strength and empowerment and being able to make a decision like that? And I'm like, well, because I just can't at the moment. Like, I'm not there yet. Like, I know deep down that, and it is the best decision for me and my family, and it's great because I get to be at home every day, do school pickups, drop-offs, go to every sport. Like, it is good, but I miss that connection. I miss that team. I don't miss the job. Actually, that's a lie. Like, yesterday we had a text come through for a vertical rescue job, which is my bread and butter. Like, I love that was where my passion lied within fire and rescue, and having the FOMO of what that job is, and even jumping on the QFD website of the current incidents and seeing where it is, what it is. I'm like, man, this ain't healthy. And then making the call this morning, like, hey, you need to take me off this list. I don't need that distraction, and that still hurts. Yeah.
So, mate, that was 3-4 months ago. You said, what is your life looking like now? You said, a lot more school drop-offs, pickups, more time with the family. You spending a lot more time with your treatment team, try and get on top of it?
Yeah, definitely. So probably a lot more engaged in. So second time occurring, a lot more engaged, a lot more knowledge, not more knowledgeable. Been through it before. Can fix what I didn't do last time. Can identify the faults the last time that I didn't do in that instance that I can do in this instance. A lot less pride in this time. I've got a lot of different space in my life as well, and not putting the pressure on myself to to go back, not putting that pressure on myself to be who I think I need to be. I'm just being who I want to be. And that involves, a lot more in-depth engagement with the psych, and really unpacking a lot of it. Like unpacking this last 25 years that is just fucking heart rate up and not stopping to smell the roses. And so stopping to smell the roses and really unpack the whole lot and come to the realisation that it's probably where this chapter of my life ends, and not rushing to figure out what the next one looks like. Doing the research behind, how I still financially support my family, and there's so many good things through DVA and work cover and Q Super that make sure you are supported in that field if you need it. So that's reassuring. And then, doing things like reconnecting with old friendships. And you've had Harry Moffat on here a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah,
So Harry Moffat's book, yeah, he's great. So Moff's book, the 11 Bats, I read that the first time I went off work and took a lot out of that, like making sure you get an identity outside of whatever your uniform is. So when this day comes, whether it be when you retire at 65 or when you go off work earlier, that you have something that identifies you outside the job. And so I put a lot of stuff in place from 2021 to make sure that was future proof and cemented going forward. In terms of career and stuff, like I'm not putting any pressure on myself to know what that's going to be, and to be honest with you, right now it looks like doing 2 or 3 days a week casual at BCF selling lures, because that's my passion, is fishing. Like that's my identity outside of this. Like I live in arguably probably one of the best places in the world to fish. It's right on my doorstep, and investing my time now into how to do that better, and making a couple of stupid YouTube videos for it and seeing if that goes anywhere. Like it's just stuff that I find enjoyable, and redirecting that passion I have for leadership and all that stuff just into something else. And who knows what it looks like, mate. It might be uni, might be BCF, might be just keep doing this and be a dad. Like, it's pretty exciting, to be honest. Yeah.
Sounds like you're open though to whatever that might look like, mate. It's not I must get back to the trucks or I must be this person. It sounds like you've got a pretty open mind.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas last time I was like, I have to get back to the trucks. Like I have to. Whereas this time I'm like, you know what? It's probably not. Like it's probably you've done your time. It's burnt you out. And it came to, and probably one of the things that we probably all identify with is, like when we all go to these jobs, and especially when you live in regional areas, you drive past those spots every day, every picnic, every whatever. And we went for a picnic probably about 5 months ago with the kids. So our Sunday is always a family day. We go off, we go to a waterhole, go for a swim, whatever. As I'm driving up the highway, I'm recalling all the scenes and smells of these jobs I've been to as we pass them on the highway. I'm like, man, I can't do this for another 20 years. Like I can't add another 20 years of locations to this. This isn't healthy. This has got to have an end date to it. And yeah, like sort of going back to the smells there, like, people talk about hallucination, or talk about this from the psych. She's like, it's a hallucination. And I always thought a hallucination was when you see something that's not there. But for me, I drive past these places, and I can still smell the smells of, what it's like to be at a fatal car accident. The smell of blood and oil and fuel and feces and brain matter, and like I can still smell it. So doing this EMDR takes you back through that. Like I'm working on one at the moment where, like at the moment, I sort of struggle to eat a big bit of rump steak because the fat on the end of the rump steak reminds me of jobs I've been to where you've had to pull people out of cars where things have gone through the leg. And so the EMDR helps you reprocess that and go back to that moment, live in it, and file it the way it should have been filed at the time so you can move on from it. And it works. Well, for me, it works anyway. And if that doesn't work, there's so much more research now being done into alternative therapies that are becoming much more approved. Like we look in Australia, I think they just ran off the first 10,000 pills of MDMA for clinical intervention for treatment of PTSD. There's, Ibogaine and stuff that's been done over in America, and no doubt that'll roll out to Australia eventually, and ayahuascas and and all these sort of really new age things. So I think it's a good space. Like it's definitely going to evolve a lot better. But for me, like what I'm doing now it's pretty good, and it's confronting at the time, but yeah, it's definitely working.
Mm.
Mate, on that, this might be a little bit hard to answer because you're still going through it. But if you were to give your younger self, a bit of advice with the knowledge and experience that you've had now, what do you reckon that would be?
Probably buy Bitcoin. In all seriousness, I wouldn't change anything that I've done. I would probably say to myself to be more open to criticism, good and bad, and take away your personality from it. Like being good at something or being a good boss, being good at a skill set, you need to take on positive and negative feedback, because you're not going to progress if you can't take on negative feedback. That's how you become arrogant and narcissistic, and become a sort of leader that people don't like. You need to educate yourself. I'd say to myself, and I kind of did this after a while. Educate yourself beyond what the training package is. If you're passionate about it and you don't feel it's good enough, then go and engage in something different. There's so much literature out there these days, and if you don't like the way something is, go and learn about it further, and then take that back to whatever cohort of people is running that, and be the change that you want, or push the change that you want. Put yourself into positions that implement change, but don't do that at the detriment to your own mental health. And what I mean by saying that is that most of us who sit in these sorts of circles, we want to push change, or we're not content to sit in the blue chairs and watch a movie and be blissfully unaware of what's going on around us. Most of us want to progress change and get frustrated because it doesn't, because you're hamstrung by budgets, personalities, time frames, operations, all those sorts of things. So we sit close to the sun, and then we feel rejected a lot when those things that you've invested so much time in then just get thrown back in your face. So you need to find the fine line between pushing it forward, knowing you've done all you can, and having it either not taken or taken on board. So take the small wins is where I'm going with that. Take the small wins as much as you take the big wins, because small wins, it's like having two strings of a ladder. You need to put the rungs in as you go. I heard someone say that yesterday. I was like, that's really good. Like the small wins are the rungs on the ladder. Yeah, one step at a time. So how do you, that book, The Resilience Shield. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. Yeah. Read. One of the big things I did when I first went off work was start reading those sort of books written by people, or podcasts with people that are in similar roles to you, that are suffering the same sort of things as you, learning from other people's lived experience, and finding things that are meaningful to you. Yeah.
It's awesome, mate. Some really good bits of advice in there. Really, really good bits of advice. Mate, we are going to have to pull it up. We're short for time. But, mate, thank you so much for, first of all, sharing your time with us, but also being vulnerable and sharing your story with us too, mate. Noting that you're currently still going through it and you're living it. I can't imagine that would be easy, mate. So, a very heartfelt thank you from us for...
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to come and talk about it. Like I said to you earlier, I don't want this to be a secret. It's hard to talk about it. Like it is hard, and you still do feel those moments. I do anyway. I still feel those moments of weakness for not being able to continue going on. But we're not going to influence change by remaining quiet. And people who have those big personalities, who you think are the strong ones, are generally the ones who are suffering the most. Leaders, bosses, all I see is whoever you are going forward, you need to be able to be humble in that aspect, and be the change you want.
Well, mate, you've certainly made a huge impression on the in the organisation for all good things. So I hope that guilt subsides, where eventually you feel proud for what you've done, not only with fire service but defence and.
There's probably just one thing, Gina, and I really appreciate you guys saying those things. That's really good, and I think it's one thing that I just like to tie off on, and I hope that the leaders of any organisation listening to this, in that we know that we have these jobs, whether it be police, fire, ambulance, wherever, that exposes us to high levels of trauma that well exceed anything that is considered normal. And we as adults can't indefinitely absorb trauma for all our life. And there is no role within our organisation that is considered non-operational. So with 15 years of experience in the fire service and 10 in the military behind me, and I'd like to think that I have a fair bit to offer, now I can't offer anything to that organisation. And you see plenty of people that go out at the end of these careers and have all this experience and go and set up these consultancy businesses and coaching and blah, 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 who then the government organisations then pay tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get them back to talk to them about leadership, when if they had processes in place to keep those people engaged, whether it be part-time positions, or military reservist style sort of a scheme, that they could keep that engaged for free to the benefit of their organisation. Yeah, and I think that's where managers need to take a bit of a humble pie and listen to the opinions of those people, and keep them engaged in non-operational positions and keep that experience there.
Most definitely, mate. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's something we don't do well, whether for whatever reasons, but that would be a great change to see. We continuously watch 30 years of experience walk out the door. Yep,
100%. It's so sad.
Yeah.
It's such a waste of time, skills. It's terrible.
Yep. And the knock-on effect to that person who has to walk away with no job security, or I can only imagine that would compound, the injury further. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we certainly need to get better at that.
100%. Well, mate, thanks again. Really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys, and thanks for creating this platform to get the voices of myself and the other guests. You've had some fantastic guests on here, like I said before, Harry Moffat, great guy, Dan Cooper. All guys have this mad lived experience and then taken it to the next level and translated that. And Matty Newland's his story. It's a great platform to be able to get this message out there and show future generations that what they may be feeling at the time isn't isolated, that it's nothing new.
Yeah.
That's it, mate.
Well said, mate. Very well said.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, and we look forward to having a chat again soon when you're a bit more on the upshot on the back end.
Come up for a fish, boys.
Oh, we're in.
Sounds good.
We'll be on your fishing podcast.
Yeah. Nah, not happening. Too much time in the boat, I need.
It won't be a big story on my part, mate. I can't catch fish. All right, buddy. Good to see you again, mate. Take care, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Lukey.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please show your support by subscribing, liking and rating the podcast on your listening and social media platforms. We are always looking to improve what we do. If you have feedback, suggestions for further guests, topics, or would like to be a guest yourself, please contact us via Instagram.